Hello and welcome to episode 377 of the official EstablishTheRun.com podcast. My name is Adam Levitan. As always, joined by Evan Silva. June is here. It is June 1st. Training camps will open next month. Best ball drafts, are absolutely ripping on Underdog. Almost makes it move. Evan, we're getting close here, buddy. How's it going?
Yeah, we are. It's starting to get real. I'm about to publish tiers in the draft guide, and then it's going to be moving right on to team previews. And we're going to do some team previews on this one too.
Yep. Today's show is the first of a 4-part series. We're going to go team by team, talking through the biggest thing we're looking at for each team. It could be a depth chart situation, could be an injury situation, could be something at the team level, like a throw rate or something like that. We will do 2 divisions per show, creating a 4-part series. Shout out to us. Before we get into it, I got to say, we've been having some heated debates internally about our initial rankings for the 2022 season, which I think is just like incredibly valuable exercise. We have a fistful of really, really smart people trying to poke holes in every base case, every ceiling case, every downside case for every one of these players that we're ranking. All of that funnels into our rankings for the draft kit, which continually updates all summer. So check it out. The pro version is what you want. If you're serious, it's just $49.99. It comes with a $10 credit to Underdog. Even if you already have an account, that will be credited later this month. So it's essentially $39.99. With inflation, that's essentially free. Finally, this podcast is sponsored by our friends at Underdog Fantasy. This $10 million best ball tournament, it's just so outrageous. $2 million to first, $1 million to second, $1 million to the regular season winner on a $25 buy-in. It's so outrageous. If you're not on Underdog yet, use promo code ETR when you sign up, and they'll give you a matching deposit bonus up to $100. Take their money. You can directly upload our Underdog rankings to Underdog. It really is a ton of fun to draft. All right, let's get into it here. We're going to start with the NFC East. And my thing that I'm looking at, Evan, is every time I tweet something about Zeke, the Cowboys people tell me that Zeke is fine. It was all due to this PCL injury. Oh, Zeke was having a good year. It was just the PCL that he played through that made him look so bad down the stretch last year. I'm not particularly buying that, but my concern is that maybe the Cowboys buy that. Now, unlike last year, you can get Zeke at a big discount in drafts, whereas he was going the first round last year. He's going way later this year. Still scares me. That's what I'm watching for. How healthy, how effective is Zeke? What will the split be between him and Pollard? Any thoughts there, and anything else you have on Dallas?
We've been talking about Ezekiel Elliott's inefficiency for years now. So I definitely lean toward not entirely dismissing the PCL injury as being a factor in his most recent inefficiency, but I think that this has been a year-over-year thing at this point, and you have to wonder, will the Cowboys this year, will this be the year that the Cowboys kind of wake up and realize that they need the explosive playmaking ability of Tony Pollard more, especially having lost Amari Cooper, Michael Gallup coming off a serious late season injury, more ancillary pieces like Cedric Wilson, Blake Jarwin are gone. Are they going to need to use Tony Pollard more? The assumption of rational coaching here is yes, but we know that the front office in particular in Dallas is committed to making Zeke work.
Yeah. When you're making $90 million, you are committed to making it work. The thing about the ADP, I mentioned first round this year, current ADP on Underdog for Zeke is 41st overall. We have him 43rd right now in Underdog rankings, just slightly behind ADP. So yeah, I won't be taking Ezekiel Elliott in that range. There's so many wide receivers there that I want to take, and I think Zeke may be done, but at least you're not paying first round like you were last year. Let's go to the Giants. My question, what I'm watching, can Brian Daboll save Daniel Jones? And I've made this comp. Everybody's making this comp. It's not a unique comp, but man, the accuracy issues, the turnover issues, the big body, the strong arm, the mobility that Daniel Jones, all that stuff that has Daniel Jones, that's what people were saying about Josh Allen, who, by the way, is like the favorite to win MVP. Bills are favorite to win the Super Bowl now. That was what everybody used to say about Josh Allen. So I'm not saying that Daniel Jones can have a turnaround like Josh Allen did, but it's not like so far-fetched. So my big question on there, how much do you believe that Brian Daboll can turn this offense around? Thoughts on that and anything else on the Giants?
Well, I believe in Brian Daboll's offensive philosophy. He understands that it's just so much more efficient to throw the football as opposed to running it. But there are so many question marks about virtually every member of this skill position core, beginning with Daniel Jones and whether he can be an effective, even competent starting quarterback. They've got nothing at tight end. Saquon Barkley's a question mark. Kenny Galladay's a question mark. Darius Slayton has been inconsistent and is kind of sliding down the depth chart now. Kadarius Toney, it's always something different with him. Sterling Shepard coming off a torn Achilles. Wan'Dale Robinson, the 43rd pick in the draft. He's 5'7". There's just so many question marks about this skill position core. I like what they did on the offensive line. I believe in Brian Daboll's philosophy, but man, this is a wild card team. If you've ever seen one, just really, really hard to predict. But hey, in like 2 quarterback leagues this year, I'm going to want Daniel Jones as my late round second quarterback.
Yeah. I mean, what do you think about like Tua versus Daniel Jones?
I have Daniel Jones for sure.
Yeah. And I
Yeah.
mean, Daniel Jones, we're ahead of ADP on Daniel Jones. His underdog ADP is QB 23 right now. We have him QB 19. I think Daniel Jones in those 2 QB formats, like Evan mentioned, in those best ball formats, Daniel Jones ADP is going to continue to rise through the summer.
I mean, I think we're going to get games this year where he has 40 dropbacks, somewhat
Yeah.
consistently.
Yeah.
At least until he potentially plays his way out of the position. I mean, they've won games with Tyrod Taylor before, or Brian Daboll has. He went to the playoffs in Buffalo with them. But
Yep.
they're giving him, this is his last chance.
Let's go to the Eagles. My thing that I'm watching in Philly, do they play a more pass-centric offense this year? I mean, last year was so run heavy. They didn't show a lot of confidence in Jalen Hurts' ability to throw the football. They ran in a ton with running backs. Jalen Hurts obviously ran a ton. But you can make a case that this coaching staff really wants to be a more throw-centric team. And they go out and they get A.J. Brown to speak to that. So what do you think about the idea that Jalen Hurts can actually significantly increase his pass attempts and their throw rate? And with A.J. Brown, I mean, I would assume they'll be more efficient with A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith year 2, Dallas Goedert. Like, they have some guys they can throw to for sure.
Yeah, I think the organization from top down believes in a pass-first philosophy. However, and it took them a little bit of time to realize that you don't want to play pass-first football with Jalen Hurts as your quarterback. And I think that as long as Jalen Hurts is their quarterback, they've got to build the offense around Jalen Hurts, minimizing his weaknesses and maximizing his strengths. And I don't think that they're going to build the offense around A.J. Brown. They may build, many aspects of the passing game in particular around A.J. Brown, but they've got a butt-kicking offensive line and they've got a dual-threat quarterback who's really inconsistent as a passer. They had a lot of success when they transitioned to playing run-first football last year. And A.J. Brown was not just an acquisition for this year. They signed him to a long-term contract. This is a do-or-die year for Jalen Hurts. I think they've got to build the offense around Jalen Hurts this year. And, next year they've got 2 first-round picks. They can make that move up in the draft for a quarterback if that's what it comes to. But I think they still have to continue to build this offense around Jalen Hurts and not A.J. Brown.
When we did the top 150 reveal show, we talked a lot about Miles Sanders. Evan way higher than market on Miles Sanders. The secondary question I had here was, if they don't shift to a very throw heavy offense, can Miles Sanders regain a stranglehold on the backfield? I mean, we talked about last year how Kenneth Gainwell played and Boston Scott played, and around the red zone, around the goal line, they weren't featuring Miles Sanders. So I think that's something to watch in training camp. How far can Miles Sanders separate from Gainwell and Boston Scott? Let's go to Washington. The question I have, for me, for Washington, is Carson Wentz even average? Because I like Terry McLaurin. I want to like Jahan Dotson. I want to like Logan Thomas. Antonio Gibson, all this stuff, Curtis Samuel. But if Carson Wentz isn't it, then they have a lot of problems, because I don't think the skill players can really prop up Carson Wentz. That's my question for them. What are you thinking about with the Washington football team, aka the Commanders?
I mean, Carson Wentz he has, with the exception of the 1 year where he was legitimately in the MVP race and he was functioning at an incredible clip on third downs, which does not necessarily carry over from year to year. He's been a mediocre to below average quarterback, and I think that that's what he is. I mean, I think we kind of know what Carson Wentz is right now. You know, the Eagles, the team that traded up a ton of, using a ton of draft capital to go get him near the top of the draft. They gave up on him, and as did Frank Reich, under whom he had that successful MVP caliber year.
Yeah.
So, and I think people in the league know what Carson Wentz is. I think we know what Carson Wentz is, and I think he's good enough to prop up Terry McLaurin and potentially, Jahan Dotson to some extent, and hopefully he can throw some touchdowns in the red zone to Logan Thomas. But, he's not elevating the play of his teammates. He's just good enough to make the guys around him be fantasy viable.
By the way, we've talked a lot about the three-headed backfield in Washington and all the problems that it creates for Antonio Gibson. The market has reacted. And by the way, I'm going to start doing those Market Mondays for the guys. For those of you who listened to the podcast last year, I did those Market Mondays every Monday in June and July. I'm going to start them up in about 2 weeks, June, July, August into September, basically looking at the biggest ADP movers of the previous 7 days and giving my take on whether I think it's a good move or a bad move. Antonio Gibson's move, I mean, his ADP is tanking, man. I mean, you can get Antonio Gibson in like the 6th round now. And I didn't want to be in on Antonio Gibson in the 3rd or the 4th, or maybe not even the 5th, but in the 6th round, I'm pretty tempted on Antonio Gibson. Any thoughts on this slide of ADP for Antonio Gibson?
Well, I do think that there's a scenario where Brian Robinson just doesn't capture a role.
Yeah.
And in that scenario, we get Antonio Gibson 2021, which, he's going to mix in some good games, but, he's still going to have that JD McKissick thing hanging over his head. So that, capping his upside. But we've seen that he's got dynamic ability. He's just been really inconsistent. He's left a lot of yards on the field as a runner, and he just cannot grab this pass catching role. And with JD McKissick back there, I mean, there's no, he needs guys to get hurt really to reach his ceiling.
All right, let's go to the AFC East now. And we'll start with the Buffalo Bills, our Buffalo Bills, Super Bowl favorite Buffalo Bills. My question for them is, how much base work does James Cook get? Because this is the kind of running back I want to be on. And we're going to talk about a ton of them through these shows. A guy who can get a little bit of base work. And if he can get 5, 6, 7 carries, 8 carries, and then a ton of pass down work on a team that throws so much and scores so many touchdowns, I mean, that's the role that I like to be on for James Cook. So that's what I'll be watching. How much can James Cook siphon from Devin Singletary?
Mm-hmm.
How do you think that's going to play out, and anything else on the Bills?
Yeah, what I would be looking for would be for James Cook and Singletary to share on early downs, and then James Cook to get all the passing game stuff. And I think that in that scenario, James Cook can be like a solid RB2, in PPR leagues. I mean, Devin Singletary is a terrible receiver. PFF actually just put out a really nice article breaking down the Buffalo backfield. Devin Singletary, one of the worst receiving backs in football. James Cook was a dominant receiving back in the SEC, also can break tackles. So I do think that he is on early downs. So I do think that he's going to get some of the base work, probably not all of it. But then I think that, if he can capture that, maybe 8, 9, 10 carries a game, in addition to, 3, 4, 5 targets per game, I think he can be pretty useful.
Yeah. I mean, Thorman's Snaps and Pace article previewing the season just went up today. For those of you who have the draft kit, I would highly recommend checking out Thorman's Snaps and Pace, but I know he has a lot to say on Buffalo, and their current ADP on James Cook is 107. Devin Singletary is 104. So not a lot of opportunity cost there to take shots on these guys. Again, my lean is, if what Evan said happens, split it down the middle on early downs, all the pass down work. I mean, James Cook is going to crush at 107 ADP. The other thing I had for Buffalo was like the mystery of Steph Diggs last year. And like, I looked at this so hard last year, and I get that Steph Diggs was fine. He had a fine year, but it was not like the spike. He didn't have the spikes. He didn't have explosive, even though Buffalo threw it a ton and was efficient. So I'm still looking at the mystery of Steph Diggs' 2021 season. I don't want to just be out on him though, because like we can't figure out exactly what went wrong in 2021 on Steph Diggs. We haven't really talked about him much. Evan, where you at on Steph Diggs?
I mean, I think that, they just ran real hot the year before in terms of the downfield explosive plays, and then they didn't run as hot in that area last year. I mean, I'm way in on Stephon Diggs this year. I mean, I have him as a locked-in top 5 fantasy receiver, fringe first-round pick. I mean, I'm not moving out on Stephon Diggs at all.
Yeah.
I think the big question is, how high do we rank Gabriel Davis?
Okay.
And he is a guy that I tend to lean toward wanting to be above consensus on.
Yeah. Both these guys, consensus market is on. I mean, underdog ADP on Steph Diggs is 8.9. Underdog ADP on Gabe Davis is 53.6. Now, I think that in that format, wide receivers are going to go higher. Bills receivers are going to go higher. In home leagues, I could see both those guys going significantly lower than they do on underdog. And we'll get into some of those more differences as we get into August, the more home leagues are drafting and stuff like that. But yeah, I agree that the Gabe Davis stuff is super interesting because you have to pay a pretty penny to get Gabe Davis right now.
Yeah, and I wanted to mention that I think Jamison Crowder, if you want to go, deeper down the Bills depth chart, I think that he could smash this year. I mean, he's going to be playing a ton in the slot. He's always been a good player when he's been healthy. I thought he was an awesome real life signing, but I also think that he can do some damage in fantasy this year. And I mean, he's not being drafted like in the top 150.
No. Yes, very cheap, cheapest by far of all the pieces. Miami. So the thing I have for Miami is, can Tua, is he capable? Is Tua Tagovailoa capable of supporting all this talent? Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, Chase Edmonds, Mike Gesicki. They have Mostert and Cedric Wilson. I mean, they're deep and talented. Can Tua support this? I'm skeptical right now, and we are. God, we're like right in line with ADP on Tyreek and Jalen Waddle. I don't know if I'm taking Tyreek and Jalen Waddle where they're going at 21 and 35 respectively right now, just because I don't know if Tua can do it. So that's what I'm thinking on Miami. Where are you at on them?
I think that he can support Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle to some extent. Definitely Tyreek Hill. I think Tyreek Hill is going to be fine. I think being in line with ADP, even being a little bit ahead of ADP on Tyreek Hill is fine. I think that he'll be able to get the ball to Jalen Waddle. Like, this is going to be a high percentage run after catch offense instituted by Mike McDaniel. One thing you have to consider, though, is that, Mike McDaniel coming from the Kyle Shanahan tree, Kyle Shanahan's one of the run heaviest play callers in the NFL. So will Mike McDaniel try to have like run pass balance? Some of these coaching trees believe in run pass balance. But I think that there's a big teardrop after Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle to the rest of those guys. We know Mike Gesicki. He's had moments. Cedric Wilson has had moments, but there's two guys up top, and those guys are going to get fed on high percentage run after catch opportunities. And I think the rest of the guys are going to really struggle to make noise.
No doubt, two of the best yards after catch receivers in the league are Tyreek and Jalen Waddle. And you mentioned the comp between San Francisco, what they've done with their backfield, and what Miami's doing. Miami's kind of doing the same thing. They have one guy who they paid a little bit of money to, Chase Edmonds, but then they're just picking up backs, constantly. Raheem Mostert, Sony Michel, Myles Gaskin. That's kind of what San Francisco and Kyle Shanahan has done there with their backfield. Just get a bunch of guys, let them all compete, see who comes out. Guys are going to get hurt. It's a good comp, I think. Jets. So, we talked a lot about Zach Wilson on the pod with Ryan Reynolds on the awards pod. I think I'm lower on Zach Wilson than Evan is. I'm watching to see, and similar to Tua, they have a lot of talent on the Jets right now. They've improved a ton, but was Zach Wilson's rookie year a fluke? And I don't mean a fluke in a good way. Was it a fluke he was so bad? Was that a fluke in Zach Wilson? And can he, similar to Tua, can he support what the Jets have? What are you thinking about with the Jets?
I just don't know. I don't feel like I'm particularly high on Zach Wilson. I did take him at 150-1 to win MVP, but that's because it was 150-1 and he's like a starting quarterback, on a team that has built pretty well around him. I think that Joe Douglas has done a nice job of building around Zach Wilson, and they're going to absolutely know what he is probably about 8 games into this season. We're going to know about Zach Wilson and whether he can play within structure, because that's what Mike LaFleur, another Kyle Shanahan disciple, they need their quarterbacks to play within structure. And he didn't do that. That's not how he made his plays at BYU. And he did not do that effectively last year until they really, really dialed back his pass attempts. And hey, they just traded up for a running back. It's very possible that they just run the piss out of the ball to start the season, try to get him a lot of Daniel Jeremiah, who's Joe Douglas's best buddy, has talked about on his podcast, how they want to set up a lot of easy completions for Zach Wilson, get his confidence up high. They got the 3 tight ends. They got a bunch of receivers. They got depth at receiver. that's how they want to start the season. I think they're going to be running the ball with Breece Hall and trying to increase the confidence level of Zach Wilson, get him comfortable playing within the structure of Mike LaFleur's offense.
Yeah, I mean, the two backs that they have are explosive, dynamic players. I mean, Breece Hall and Michael Carter are explosive, dynamic players. You know, the ADPs are starting to settle in on these rookies. Breece Hall, 47th. We have him 46th. And then Michael Carter, 140th. We have him 130th. I mean, we're higher in the Jets offense than market in general. The one we're highest on is Elijah Moore. His ADP is 68th. On Underdog, we have him 59th. And then, of course, we're also higher than market on Garrett Wilson and Corey Davis. So, like, yeah, I think that nobody wants to click Jets, and I think it's an opportunity to try to find ceiling outcomes in some of these guys, particularly in best ball. I think that makes sense. Let's go to last one we're going to do here today is the Patriots. I don't even think people realize. I mean, Damian Harris scored 15 touchdowns last year on 202 carries. Obviously, like, that's pretty unsustainable, but the way this team plays offense and the way Damian Harris is used, like, it's not that crazy for him to score a lot of touchdowns again. I want to see Damian Harris versus Ramondre, though, because neither of them are probably going to play on pass downs. And so if they're splitting at all, it's going to be a mess. Damian Harris separated pretty decently last year. What do you think about Damian Harris versus Ramondre and anything else on the Patriots?
Damian Harris is a really tough guy to rank because you look at the depth in New England's backfield right now, and it's not just Ramondre Stevenson. It's the two backs that they drafted. Pierre Strong is a guy that I liked before the draft. Really good athlete, highly productive for the South Dakota State Jackrabbits. And I mean, I think that he could factor in. James White is back, and James White has a draining effect on everybody's value in fantasy because he's going to dominate the passing down work. So, yeah, I mean, we can look back. Look, Damian Harris is the lead back on a run-heavy team with a pretty good offensive line that's going to stay committed to the run. He's probably not going to score as many touchdowns as he did last year, but he's still got double-digit touchdowns in his range of potential outcomes. He's a frustrating guy to rank. I mean, when I look at him in my rankings, in my tiers, sometimes I want to move him down. Sometimes I want to move him up, and it's just he's a frustrating guy to rank.
Yeah, I mean, he's going 93rd, 94th overall right now. We have him 114th, and we have Ramondre 118th. So we have the gap pretty close between them. The market thinks that the gap is wider between Damian Harris and Ramondre Stevenson right now. We'll see how that plays out. But I do think that at least my gut from last year was that they prefer Damian Harris. And by the way, Damian Harris cost me $750K last year. That FanDuel tournament, I got second in. The guy had Damian Harris just shoved a touchdown down my throat late. But anyways, that's a story for another day.
You won plenty of money. All right.
Okay. You're right. You're right. All right. That is going to do it for this first of 4-part team-by-team preview. Next time, we'll be back with the NFC North and AFC North. For Evan. For Producer Luke, I am Adam. Good luck, everybody.